I won $4 million and decided to test my family. What happened next? I never could have imagined. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Rachel Miller. I'm 30 years old and I work as a nurse in Ohio. For most of my life, I've lived simply. Nothing fancy, just paying bills, working long shifts, and trying to make ends meet. I never expected luck to come knocking, but one random evening it did. I had bought a ticket on my way home from work, more out of habit than days later. I checked the numbers while sitting at my kitchen table, still in scrubs, and my hands started to shake. Every number matched. $4 million after taxes was suddenly mine. I sat there staring at the paper, heart racing, and a thought hit me harder than the money itself. I can't tell them. By them, I meant my family. My mom, Carol, my dad, Frank, my sister, Melissa, and her husband, Tyler. To most people, family means love, support, and loyalty. To me, family meant constant criticism, backhanded comments, and being treated like I wasn't enough. Every time I stumbled, they reminded me of it. Every time they needed help, I was there. But when I needed the smallest bit of support, they vanished. I didn't want their hands in my pockets the moment they heard the news. More than that, I wanted to know for sure who they really were when I had nothing. That's when I came up with my little test. I grabbed my phone and opened the family group chat. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I typed slowly, making sure the words sounded real. Hey guys, I've got some bad news. I lost my job today. They're cutting staff at the hospital. I'm behind on bills and not sure how I'm going to make rent. I hate to ask, but could someone lend me a little until I get back on my feet? I read it twice, my chest tight, and then hit send. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared as someone typed, paused, and typed again. My phone buzzed with replies, one after another. I leaned back in my chair, waiting. This was it, the moment I'd finally see their true faces without the mask. The money in my bank account stayed quiet, untouched, like a secret sitting beside me. I didn't need a dime from them. I just needed to know if, for once in my life, they'd show up when I asked. The screen lit up again. The words appeared cold, blunt, and sharper than I'd braced for. My test had only just begun. The first reply came from my mom. I stared at the screen as her words popped up, each one cutting deeper than I expected. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't sound worried or even curious about what had happened. Instead, she wrote, "Rachel, you need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. We can't keep bailing you out." I read it twice, my stomach sinking. I hadn't asked her for anything before, not really. I wasn't the kind of daughter who ran to her parents for money or cried about my problems. And this time, all I asked for was a little help to cover rent until I figured things out. But her words made it sound like I was some burden she'd been carrying for years. Before I could even type a reply, my dad chimed in. His message was shorter, but it stung just as much. "You've always made bad decisions, Rachel. Maybe this is another lesson." I stared at it, my fingers tightening around the phone. Bad decisions? I'd spent years working 12-hour shifts, saving what I could, helping them when they needed it. I didn't drink, I didn't gamble, I didn't party. But to him, I was still the one who never measured up. Then came Melissa. She didn't even try to sugarcoat it. "Well, maybe this will finally teach you some responsibility." I could almost hear her voice, that smug tone she always used when she thought she was better than me. Melissa was the golden child, the one mom and dad praised no matter what. I remembered covering for her in high school when she skipped classes. I remembered slipping her money when she maxed out her credit card. But none of that mattered now. She saw my struggle as a punchline, a way to feel superior. And then, of course, Tyler had to jump in. He never missed a chance to take a cheap shot. "Hey, at least you can couch surf like a teenager. Keep it light, right?" I imagined him grinning as he typed it, Melissa laughing beside him. My chest burned. It wasn't just that they refused to help. It was the way they enjoyed tearing me down. I set the phone down on the table and just sat there, listening to the hum of the fridge in my apartment. The silence in the room felt heavier after their word. I hadn't expected a miracle, but I thought maybe one of them would offer something, kindness, advice, a little money to tide me over. But no. All I got was blame, judgment, and jokes at my expense. The group chat stayed quiet after that. No one followed up. No one asked if I had food, or if I'd be okay for the next month, or if I needed someone to talk to. The conversation had moved on like my little confession was just background noise, something to dismiss and forget. I picked the phone back up, scrolled through their words again, and forced myself to keep my face calm. I didn't reply. I didn't beg or explain. I just sat there, letting every word sink in. This was exactly why I had set the trap. They showed me their true colors without hesitation. And now I knew exactly where I stood. Inside, the anger was building, but it wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, almost cold. I wasn't surprised, not really. I just finally had the proof I needed. Melissa invited me to a small family barbecue at her place a few days later. At first, I thought about saying no, but something in me wanted to go. Maybe I was hoping they would act differently face to face, maybe show some concern. So I went, carrying a simple salad I'd thrown together, even though my heart wasn't in it. Her backyard was filled with the smell of grilled burgers and the sound of kids running around. Everyone seemed relaxed, laughing and talking as if nothing had happened in the group chat. I tried to blend in, smiling politely, but I kept to myself. I sat with a paper plate in my lap, half listening to conversations, half lost in my own thoughts. At one point, I stepped inside to refill my drink. As I came back out, I slowed when I heard Melissa and Tyler's voices drifting from the side of the house. They thought no one could hear them. "She'll probably end up living in her car," Melissa said, laughing softly. "Can you imagine Rachel sleeping in that old thing?" Tyler chuckled. "Maybe we'll see her parked outside one day. Free babysitter if she's living on the street." They both laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. I froze just around the corner, clutching my cup so tight it almost cracked. My chest felt heavy, and my face burned. They weren't just refusing to help me. They were enjoying the idea of me failing, of me suffering. I stepped back quietly so they wouldn't see me, but their voices kept ringing in my ears. That laughter, it was worse than the silence in the group chat. At least then, I could pretend maybe they didn't mean it. But here, there was no pretending. They were happy at the thought of me falling apart. Memories rushed through me, one after another. The time Melissa called me crying because she was short on rent, and I pulled money out of my own savings to help her. The nights I babysat her kids for free so she and Tyler could go out, even when I was exhausted from 12-hour shifts. The moment she admitted she had maxed out her credit card, and I handed her money without hesitation, telling her she'd pay me back when she could. She never did, but I didn't push, because that's what family was supposed to do. All those sacrifices, all those times I showed up for her, and this was how she talked about me behind my back. Like my pain was entertainment. Like my life was a joke. I went back to my seat at the table, forcing my face to stay calm, pretending I hadn't heard anything. I smiled when someone asked me to pass the ketchup, but inside, something shifted. The hurt was still there, but now it had a sharp edge. For the first time in my life, I saw the truth clearly. It wasn't just that my family didn't care. They actually enjoyed watching me struggle. That realization was heavier than anything they had ever said to my face. That night after the barbecue, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Their laughter still echoed in my head, sharp and cruel. My decision came slowly but firmly. They would never see a single cent of my winnings. Not a penny. But cutting them off completely wasn't enough for me. I wanted to see them reveal their true faces. I wanted them to expose themselves, not just to me, but to each other. The next time I saw Melissa, I dropped the first hint. We were sitting at her kitchen table, while her kids played in the living room. She asked casually if I was still looking for work. I told her I'd been meeting with a lawyer about some personal matters. I didn't say what kind of matters, but I let the words hang in the air long enough to wonder. Her eyes narrowed, and she leaned forward, trying to read me. From that day on, her tone with me changed. Suddenly she was calling more often, checking in as if she cared about how I was doing. She'd say things like, "Just wanted to see how my sister is holding up," or, "We should spend more time together." For years, Melissa barely noticed me unless she needed something, but now she was suddenly full of warmth. My mom was the next to shift. Carol had spent years criticizing me, pointing out every choice she thought was wrong. But after I mentioned offhand at dinner that if I ever came into money, I'd make sure my family was taken care of, her voice softened. She started saying things like, "Rachel, you've always been so responsible," and "I'm proud of how hard you've worked." She even began sending me texts asking if I needed a hot meal or a ride somewhere. It was like watching a stranger wearing my mother's face. Frank, my dad, played his part too. He had always been blunt and distant, but suddenly he was full of fatherly wisdom. He started giving me advice I hadn't asked for, long talks about saving, investing, and planning for the future. He spoke as if he had been guiding me all along, as if he were some kind of mentor I could depend on. And then there was Tyler. The man who had laughed about me living in my car now tried to act like a buddy. He'd clap me on the back when I visited, joke about grilling together, and even offered to help me fix up my car, if I needed. His fake friendliness was so forced it almost made me laugh. Through it all, I kept up the act. I still wore the tired face of someone who was barely making it. I talked about budgeting carefully, about sending out job applications, about being nervous for the future. I kept my clothes simple, my car the same beat-up model, my apartment untouched. On the outside, I was still the struggling nurse who'd just lost her job. On the inside, I was sitting on $4 million and a growing sense of calm. They thought I was weak. They thought I was desperate, and that made their sudden kindness all the more revealing. I didn't need to accuse them of anything. All I had to do was keep talking, keep dropping small hints, and let them show me exactly who they were. One evening, while sitting in my parents' living room, I decided it was time for the next part of my plan. We were all together, Mom, Dad, Melissa, and Tyler. The television was on in the background, but no one was really watching. I leaned forward and said in a calm voice that I had been looking into an opportunity. I told them it was a chance to invest in a small local business, something I thought had real potential. I said I couldn't do it alone, but if I had a few partners, it could turn into something solid. The room went quiet for a moment, and then Melissa burst out laughing. She didn't even try to hold it back. "You," she said, shaking her head. "You're not smart enough to run anything. You'd probably lose it all in the first month." Her laughter carried on, and she looked at Tyler like she expected him to join in. Of course he did. He leaned back on the couch, a smirk tugging at his mouth. "Yeah, right. I'm not throwing away money on one of your pipe dreams. You can barely manage your own bills, Rachel. What makes you think you can handle a business?" His words were sharp, but the way he said them, almost joking, made them sting even more. I looked at my parents, hoping they might show something different, but Mom just shook her head, her voice flat. "Rachel, stop chasing nonsense. You need a real job, something stable. You can't keep going after silly ideas." Dad added his voice, almost sighing as if he were tired of me. "You've always been like this, jumping into things without thinking. Forget about business and focus on finding steady work. That's the only way you'll ever get ahead." I nodded quietly, keeping my face calm even as their words cut through me. Inside, though, I was steady. This was exactly what I expected, and exactly what I wanted them to show me. They had no faith in me, not even enough to consider the possibility that I could succeed at something. No curiosity, no questions, no support. Just doubt, criticism, and laughter. I sat back, listening as Melissa and Tyler continued to joke, and my parents went on about how I needed to grow up and stop living in fantasy land. I didn't argue. I didn't try to defend myself. I just let them talk, storing every word away. The truth couldn't have been clearer. When they thought I was down, they kicked me harder. When they thought I might have a chance to build something, they mocked me. And when I hinted that money might someday be in my hands, their kindness was fake. This test, this fake business deal, told me everything I needed to know. I smiled politely, as if their words didn't bother me, and nodded again. But inside, I felt more certain than ever. My plan was working. I couldn't keep the secret bottled up any longer. Holding it in around my family was one thing, but carrying it alone every single day was starting to feel heavy. There was only one person I trusted enough to share it with, my best friend, Hannah. She had been by my side since college, the kind of friend who showed up at midnight if I needed her, no questions asked. We met at her apartment on a quiet Saturday afternoon. She poured us both coffee, and we sat across from each other at her small kitchen table. My hands shook a little as I wrapped them around the mug. "I need to tell you something," I began, my voice low. She raised her eyebrows, waiting. "I didn't lose my job. That was just a test. And, Hannah, I won the lottery. For $1 million after taxes." For a moment, she didn't move. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened slightly, and then she leaned back in her chair. "Are you serious?" she whispered. I nodded, biting my lip. Every word. Her shock turned into laughter, the kind that bubbled up from her chest and spilled out. She jumped up and hugged me across the table, nearly knocking over her coffee. "Rachel, that's amazing. Oh my God, I can't believe this. You deserve it more than anyone I know." Her excitement was pure, not the greedy kind I'd seen in my family's eyes when I dropped hints. Hannah's joy was for me, not for what she could get out of it. That was why I told her. After the initial shock settled, she sat back down, her face serious. "So why haven't you told your family?" I sighed. "Because I needed to know who they really are. And now I do. They laughed at me, mocked me, and treated me like garbage when they thought I was broke. Now they're acting nice because they suspect something. I don't want them to get a single penny." Hannah nodded slowly, her expression hardening. "Good. Don't give them anything. They don't deserve you, let alone your money." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "But if you really want to make it clear, maybe it's time to show them who they are. Not by yelling, not by fighting, but by letting them see themselves." We spent the next hour tossing around ideas. Should I confront them one by one? Should I let them think they were about to get something, then pull it away? Hannah suggested a dinner, something public where they couldn't hide behind excuses. I liked that. A setting where they'd reveal their greed openly, where their words could hang in the air for everyone to hear. By the time I left her apartment, my nerves had settled into a calm determination. The plan was starting to take shape. Hannah promised she wouldn't breathe a word to anyone, and I believed her. Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I wasn't carrying the weight alone anymore, and now I had a clear vision of what needed to be done. The perfect setup was already forming in my mind. I called my family and invited them to dinner at a nice steakhouse in town. The kind of place none of us ever went to unless it was a wedding or a big anniversary. When I told them I'd be covering the bill, they agreed right away. I could almost hear the curiosity in their voices, as if they were already guessing why I wanted to see them. That evening, I arrived early and waited at a big round table near the window. The place smelled of grilled steaks and butter, the low hum of chatter filling the room. When they walked in, I stood to greet them. Melissa hugged me tighter than usual, her smile a little too wide. Tyler clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends. Mom kissed my cheek and told me how nice I looked, and Dad actually smiled instead of giving me his usual gruff nod. We ordered drinks and appetizers, and the conversation stayed light. They asked how I was holding up, if I was still job hunting, little questions that felt rehearsed. I gave short answers, letting them think I was still just scraping by. When the waiter set down a plate of garlic bread and shrimp cocktail, I leaned back in my chair and spoke casually, as if it were nothing important. I should probably tell you all, I came into some money recently. The effect was instant. Melissa's fork froze in midair, her eyes shining with sudden interest. Tyler leaned in, his smirk slipping into a grin. Mom's hand went to her chest like she'd just heard shocking news, and Dad cleared his throat, trying to look composed. Melissa was the first to speak, her voice filled with excitement. "Oh, Rachel, that's amazing. I knew things would turn around for you. I'm so proud of you." Her tone was sugary sweet, the kind she only used when she wanted something. Tyler nodded quickly, plastering on a friendly smile. "That's great, Rachel. You deserve it. Really. If you ever need advice on how to handle it, I'd be happy to help." Mom leaned forward, her voice soft and warm. "Honey, I knew you'd land on your feet. You've always been strong, even if you don't see it yourself. I'm just so glad things are looking up." Dad chuckled and reached for his glass. "That's my smart daughter. I knew you'd figure it out eventually." His words were coated with pride he had never shown before. I didn't respond right away. I just sat back, sipping my drink, and watched them perform. It was like watching actors on a stage, each one slipping into a role. Suddenly they were supportive, loving, proud. Gone were the sharp comments, the laughter at my expense. All it took was one vague sentence about money, and they transformed. I smiled politely, nodding at their words, but inside I felt nothing but cold certainty. The trap had been set, and they had walked right into it. I waited until the main dishes were cleared from the table. Everyone was in a good mood, laughing too loudly, sipping their drinks like this was some kind of celebration. I set my napkin down and looked at each of them, calm and steady. "A few weeks ago," I said softly, "I told you all I lost my job and needed help. Not one of you was there for me." The smiles faded. Melissa's fork slipped against her plate with a faint scrape. Tyler leaned back, his grin flickering. My mom frowned as if she didn't understand, and my dad stared at me with narrowed eyes. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. "And just so no one forgets," I added, "I brought something with me." With a few taps, the recording began to play. The voices filled the air, clear and sharp. Melissa's laugh. Tyler's joke. "She'll probably end up living in her car." Their laughter followed, ugly and cruel. The table went dead silent. No one moved, no one breathed. The only sounds were the clinking of dishes from other tables and the recording still playing in my hand. I let it run long enough for the words to sink in before pressing stop. Melissa was the first to break. "Rachel, that was taken out of context. We were just messing around. You know how I joke sometimes." Her voice cracked, her smile forced and shaky. Tyler tried to laugh, but it came out strained. "Yeah, come on, it was just a joke. You can't seriously be upset about that. We didn't mean anything by it." My mom leaned forward quickly, her hands folded together. "Honey, they were just being silly. You know your sister and Tyler. They tease, that's all. Don't take it to heart. We love you." Dad cleared his throat, his face stiff. "Rachel, you've always been too sensitive. They didn't mean to hurt you. You need to toughen up." I stared at them, one by one. Their excuses slid off me like water on glass. Nothing they said mattered. I already knew the truth, and now it was laid bare on the table for everyone to see. "You don't get it," I said, my voice steady. "You weren't there for me when I needed you. Not once. And now you'll get nothing from me. Ever." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. No one tried to speak again. They just sat there, frozen in silence, faces red, eyes darting around the table as if looking for a way out. I placed my card on the bill when the waiter brought it over, ignoring the awkward shifting in their seats. Once it was paid, I stood up, smoothed down my jacket, and looked at them one last time. They stayed silent, still stunned, as I walked out of the restaurant and into the cool night air, leaving them behind. The next morning, my phone started lighting up nonstop. Message after message came in before the sun was even up. At first, I let it sit there, but after a while I opened it and read. Melissa's texts came in long, angry paragraphs. "How could you humiliate me like that? You're cruel. You've always been jealous. I was only trying to lighten the mood." You made me look like a monster in front of everyone." Her words spilled across the screen, twisting things until she almost sounded like the victim. My dad's message was short and sharp. "Don't forget who raised you. You owe us. Don't throw away your family over nothing." As if years of criticism and coldness were something I was supposed to repay. Mom's messages had a different tone. "Rachel, honey, please. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were just stressed. We love you. Don't shut us out. Family is all we have." She added hearts and crying faces, as if those little symbols could erase the things she'd said. Then came Tyler. His texts were full of threats. "You better delete that recording. Playing it like that was defamation. I could sue you, and don't think I won't. You're lucky I don't already have a lawyer." His words were sharp and desperate, like he was trying to scare me into silence. I didn't answer a single one of them. I let the messages stack up until I stopped opening them at all. Their words no longer mattered. Instead, I focused on what I wanted to do with the money. I sent a large donation to a children's hospital, knowing it would actually help people who needed it. I met with a financial advisor and opened a retirement account, something solid and safe for my future. Then I sat down with Hannah and helped her start the coffee shop she'd always dreamed about. Watching her face light up when we signed the lease was better than anything my family could have given me. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Free from their judgment, free from their control, free from the weight of trying to earn love that was never there. The money hadn't just changed my bank account, it had given me the chance to walk away without looking back. I finally bought a small, cozy house outside the city. It wasn't a mansion or anything flashy, but it was mine. A warm porch, a quiet street, and a big kitchen where I could cook without anyone criticizing me. It was everything I needed. I filled it with plants, books, and quiet mornings. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. I cut off all contact with my family. No calls, no texts, no visits on holidays. At first, they tried to break through the silence, but when they realized I wasn't giving in, they stopped. The peace that followed was worth more than the $4 million ever could be. Years passed. I built a new life, steady, calm, and filled with people who actually cared about me. Hannah's coffee shop became a success, and we'd sit there sometimes, laughing over lattes, grateful that loyalty still existed in the world. My past family became nothing more than a shadow in the back of my mind. Then, one afternoon, I got a message. It was from Melissa. She was broke, divorced from Tyler, and struggling. Her words were desperate, filled with the kind of pleading she once mocked me. Not long after, I learned Mom was in poor health and Dad was drowning in debt. I could have ignored it. A big part of me wanted to. But instead, I agreed to meet them once, not out of pity, but because I wanted to say the words they needed to hear. We met in Mom and Dad's old living room. The house felt smaller, darker, worn down by time and bills they couldn't pay. Melissa sat hunched on the couch, her eyes tired. Mom's face was pale and Dad looked thinner, older, defeated. They watched me as if I were their last hope. I stood in front of them, calm and steady. My voice didn't shake. "When I had nothing, you turned your backs on me. Now I have everything, and you'll get nothing. That's the family you chose to be." No one said a word. Melissa lowered her head, Mom's lips trembled, and Dad just stared at the floor. The silence filled the room, heavy and final. I didn't stay long. I turned, walked to the door, and stepped outside without looking back. The air outside felt clean, light, almost new. For the first time, I knew the past couldn't touch me anymore. That was the last time I ever saw them. Did Rachel do the right thing by cutting her family out forever, or should she have forgiven them and tried again? I'd love to know what you think. Share your thoughts below. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more.